Hello everyone, welcome to Questions and Reason. This is Concepts. I am Manaka Anthony Raphasha. Today we're going to be talking the African family structure. Fantastic. If you haven't watched the episode Lobola, I advise you do that. It will just give you more in-depth. You don't have to, but it wouldn't hurt. Okay. So let's try to understand the African family structure before an encounter with the outside world, right? So we had what we call a patriarch. A patriarch is somebody who wanted to extend his name. To extend himself or his name. Let's say himself as well. That helps. So what he does is he starts a family. On the topic of Lobola, we actually defined on how that family is started, right? So you have an individual who wants to start a family, and the family is an extension of who he is, right? So because we are mortals, because we are mortals, we live for a certain time on earth and we die. There was a desire in an African man to extend himself, to extend his lineage or his blood and pass it down for a long time. So because the ambition was to be self-sufficient, the ambition of the African family was to be self-sufficient. The African families were polygamous. Self-sufficiency means that you don't depend on the outside world for your food, shelter, clothing, and other things, but everything is done within this structure or your own unit. So he took on many wives. Polygamous means one man with many wives, so that he can have many kids. Okay, so I know that right now having many kids looks some sort of a burden, and some people even prefer not to have kids at all because they want to pursue certain things in life and they feel like kids will stand in the way. But it wasn't the case back then. When you have many kids, you have more hands, and you have extended yourself a lot. This is pre-colonialism, right? So when you have many hands and you have extended yourself a lot, you will have somebody to do the herding, another one to do the hunting, another one to do what? Let's say this one is the fashion designer of the time, so they take stuff from the animals and they create clothing. So the reason why an African man back in the day would decide to have many wives is so that he can extend himself and also be self-sufficient, because you cannot do everything by yourself. So what you do is you, as I said, have many wives until your family structure becomes what we call a clan, right? A clan. A clan is a self-sufficient structure. So the people of the time didn't believe in seeking for work or employment, but they did everything by themselves. And once you have that land, you have soldiers, you have those that train kids. I would say modern, teachers of the time. Teachers of the time. Even though there was, back in the day, the model of teaching was not a classroom setting, but the younger kids would be with an elder, and then they are taught the way of life. And then later on, they would go to work in the fields with the people who work in the fields so that they can see how the fields are run. And then some will go hunting, and then they will see how hunting is done. Unfortunately, the Africans of the time were not really seafood people. I know we love seafood now, but it wasn't something that they would say, okay, let's go out and, do some fishing and whatnot. But if they knew how to, if this was their interest, then they would teach their children how to go and do the fishing as well, right? So people are complaining that, let me try to erase this, the idea of population control, right? Population control. So the notion of population control is to say you cannot extend yourself a lot because you're gonna waste natural resources. You guys are a lot, right? That means you're gonna waste natural resources. I stand to argue against that. If you look at developed worlds, first world countries, they are the biggest consumers. Biggest consumers. And most families are not a lot of families, but they consume more resources than a family in a third world country. So a family of 4 in the USA, for example, has more consumption than a family of 12 in the Middle East. So the idea that population control will save the world is not really true, because, like I said, in the first world countries, the people are little in a house, but then they eat or they consume more resources than 5 families of 12 each in the Middle East. So this notion cannot be true. The problem is not population. Not population. The problem is consumption. Consumption has always been the problem. People are unable to live within their means, or unable to create a means to sustain themselves. So, like I said, the problem is consumption. Anyway, I don't want to move outside what I was saying. I just wanted to argue the idea that a lot of people are saying if you have a lot of kids, then you're gonna waste resources. But really, like I said, one family in the USA, a family of 4 consumes more than a family of 12 in the Middle East or in Africa or in South America. All right, so this cannot be true. Problem is consumption. If we are able to consume things within our means, we won't have things like debt problems. I feel like I'm moving away from the main topic. But we have debt problems because we are unable to live within our means, or we are unable to create means to sustain ourselves. If you create debts in order to come here, where you are able to create means to sustain yourself and to manage the debt, that is great. But a lot of people just create more debt and more debt for consumption, not for sustenance. Anyway, let's go back to the patriarch, the leader of a clan. So you see that a family unit like this, or a clan, cannot have problems such as unemployment. can never be a problem, because, like I said, the leader extends himself or clones himself in a way. So you see that I have learned how to navigate, strategize, and live in this world. Let me make a duplicate of myself, right? So you make more people who are like you, who are learning from you, who are becoming the you in terms of skill, in terms of strategy, in terms of survival. So this means that you now can do more, or you have relieved yourself from certain duties that maybe are just time consuming and are not really worth your time, right? So these duties are passed down to people who will do it until they extend themselves, so that what? They are relieved of the duties as well, until you have a clan that is self-sustaining, that is not waiting for the UN to give it food, right? Why are we waiting for an NGO or an external organization to come and help the African? How did we get to this issue? All right, let's get to that. It has to do a lot with slavery and colonialism, colonialization, right? Colonialization. Yeah, you get my drill. So back in the day, you find the man who looks strong, who is strong, not looks strong, who is strong and is able to sustain himself and his family. It might be multiple wives or a monogamous situation. It doesn't really matter. What matters is that he's able to sustain them without going and seeking work in a far place, right? And then you have a brutal removal of this man from his home, right? So the way of this man gets lost, the way the education, knowledge, wisdom, strength is removed from the family, because there is a demand for slavery and people are going around removing the man from his household, right? So we no longer have situations that are structures that can self-sustain. The women, some women are taken, some are not, but that whole situation of being forcefully removed from your home creates a lot of problems for the African family structure. So we get to a point where for thousands of years we cannot teach our kids apprenticeship. So as I said, that for the African to learn, it was through, being with the elders, so it would be passed down orally, the history, the skills and everything. It had to be in person, so you see somebody doing the work and you are learning the work while you are working as well, until you are ready to move on and teach other people. So now the person who teaches the African skills and knowledge is removed from his home. So you are cutting the flow of knowledge from generation to generation. So you have a generation that knows how to sustain its health, its wealth, and so on and so forth. And all of this knowledge cannot be passed down anymore to this generation. So this generation is bereft of anything. Some of them grow up in slavery. Some of them grow up outside of slavery, but without the proper knowledge. So it's easier to take advantage of them, and they become the manpower of the colonial will. So they spend hundreds and hundreds of years under bondage, and then finally they win. What do? They win back their freedom, right? They win their freedom back. But when they do win it, they don't know how to self-sustain. So it means all these years they spend working to create the wealth of another race. The wealth of another race might look like it's gone. But in fact, if they cannot self-sustain, they are gonna go back and take low salaries to sustain themselves. This is not just an economic problem, it's also a problem of you don't know how to start and build a family. Because you cannot have these two, we end up having a big problem of fatherless homes. Homes without the father, the one who extends himself, right? So you end up having homes without daddies. It is a big problem because this guy is supposed to learn the strategy, the skills, and what so forth, and extend himself so that he can get back his original structure. But now this guy has no skill, has no knowledge, has no wisdom of the past to be able to sustain such a family unit. So what does he do? He makes kids, right? And because he has to go and look for work now, he dumps them. He dumps the children. Maybe at the grandmother's, at the grannies, something like that. So he goes look for work while he has children. He's not there to educate them. They're at a distant place, and the kids now stay with the granny. He doesn't have an opportunity to replicate himself as his forefathers did. Not only that, but what will he replicate if he doesn't have the knowledge, the skills, and the way of his forefathers? He doesn't have that at all. So this goes on for generations. It goes on for generations until the father of the home completely loses his identity. He completely loses it. Now it's fine just to go and make a kid somewhere and then expect that kid to look for you maybe 20 years later or something like that. It is a heritage. We inherited this curse. That is not the way of the African family unit, okay? Okay, enough about the father, right? Let's talk the children now, right? The kids. So the kids are at Gogo's. They're at Mukulu's, at the grandparents' place. The grandparents' place, right? So Gogo has 3 kids. 1, 2, 3. She leaves her kids to go and find work. Maybe doesn't even get it, we don't know. Doesn't matter. This one leaves kids here, this one leaves kids here. So the wonderful thing about this situation is that the kids get to know each other. They get to have a relationship. Let's say relationship. They get to connect. They get to look out for each other. I know that white people want us to call each other cousins, but in the African tradition, these are our siblings, brothers and sisters. Your aunt's children are your brothers and sisters, right? So Mam Gani's children is my siblings. Baba Mkulu's children is my siblings, not cousins, as the tradition states. I mean, as white people wants us to call each other cousins. So, he o na le mamogolo or o na le mane or o na le ragadi. Her children are your siblings. And you get to know each other, you get to interact, right? And you get to build a bond. But that is disappearing. Maybe, yeah. So now it's disappearing because the people that left the household, let's say person 1 now got a job, comes and takes her children. They live with her in a near area, right? The area that is near to her job, so that she can see her kids on a daily basis. Totally justifiable, right? And then number 2, couldn't get work, went back home, staying at granny's with his kids. But you see the separation between these kids and these kids, and also maybe this one gets an opportunity somewhere else and they separate, right? This guy and this guy, because they work, they can now afford holidays. So even during festive, you are siblings, but your children don't know each other. For example, I have a younger brother, but my kids and his kids don't get to know each other, don't get to have a relationship. This is a problem. Why? Because it is not our way of life. And if you are going to adopt a lifestyle, you also have to know how to make it work, right? Maybe we're getting better at it somewhere, somehow, but we have lost the African way of doing things, where the head of the family is the strategist. The strategist to get us out of poverty. And helps us to learn how to sustain ourselves. What we call a legacy. Something to pass down to the children, something to pass down to the great-grandchildren. So the kids are born and they're not supposed to worry about making money, because the elder know how to make money, they teach the kids how to make money, and the grandkids, and so on and so forth, until it is extended. But some people work long hours. Some don't, but normally there is zero communication in the household. Normally zero communication. There are so many parents who struggle to sit down. Like I said, if you want to adopt a lifestyle, you're supposed to be able to sustain it, right? There are so many parents who are unable to sit down with their children and have a conversation about life generally. So many are struggling, right? You find that a household has communication only when they are watching a series on TV, their favorite TV series, right? That's the only time that they have dialogue. How are you going to pass down your learnings to the young ones if all you talk about is, for example, Uzalo? You're watching Uzalo, you're watching Skim Sam, and that's the only time you have dialogue. So you don't have time to sit down with your kids without any distractions and pass down your skills, your knowledge, and wisdom to your children. So it's gonna be a never-ending cycle. So you gather the knowledge but you can't pass it down to the next generation. They gather their knowledge as well, can't pass it down to the next generation. So every single generation we start from scratch. Some people might argue to say, hey, but we leave these people, our monies, they're in our policies and what. How are they starting from scratch? I mean, I didn't have a lot. Let me tell you something. If you're gonna leave your children with a lot of money, but zero knowledge about money, the only thing they know is that they can buy and they can afford a certain lifestyle. You are destroying, I wouldn't say destroy is maybe a strong word. You are taking them at a minus. Let's say if they were at a 5, you are not helping them get to a 10 or 100. You are taking them from a 5 to a -5. Why? Because they're gonna get used to a lot of money and the money is gonna run out. What do you think is gonna happen? They are gonna sell the things that they bought. They are gonna go out and try to live off that feeling that they once had. So once you have that feeling, you can't make anything grow. Everything is consumption. So they will run into a problem where the money is done. Yes, you left a nice policy. The money is done. But now they are going out and selling everything that they bought with the money at a lower price and making maybe even debts to get deeper into the hole. So you didn't help anyone, right? Let's talk about succession. Let's talk about succession and inheritance, because I feel like that's where we are, right? Inheritance. In the African tradition, there's something called birthrights. But nobody practices birthrights anymore. Basically, in some black cultures, the last born would inherit everything, right? So let's say I die today and my last born is gonna get everything. Why? Because my last born didn't get a chance to spend a lot of time with me to be able to teach him the ropes of this life, right? So the older ones are set aside because it is believed that you already put a lot of effort into them and a lot of investments that they should be able to take care of themselves. So I don't see it happening much anymore. Not sure why, but there's still a huge issue that a will is not the will not left behind. There's no will for most black families, right? So should I die or should a black person die, the children end up fighting for things. So we have a war around inheritance. The family that you spend all your years trying to build is now apart. Because of what? Because of greed. Mostly because of greed. hey, this belongs to me because what? Everybody's feeling entitled because you have not left a will behind, right? And we see even the siblings of the deceased trying to take that inheritance away from the children. So now it's no longer children versus children, it's children versus cousins versus aunties versus it's a disaster, right? So you get to see people trying to be rich off of somebody's death because we lost our self-sustenance. Okay, so there are those that have wills, but who is going to succeed? Who is going to take over the family legacy? That's another problem, because there are those who are there, always present, but never ready. Right? So you have the person who was always there with the dead. Hey, I love my dad, I hang around with my dad. But the dead picks up so many things that if I leave my legacy with this person, it will be squandered in a couple of days or in a couple of months. So my name will not extend to the next generation in strength. It won't be from strength to strength, right? Then there are those who are ready but not interested. Ready but not interested. They are not interested in any of your wealth. They're not interested in the sector that you're involved in. And that is another blow, right? You can see that if this person, gets their mind in the right place. And I really don't like this saying that said, no, children must continue to do what they want. How do you continue to do what you love when the legacy of your family is at risk, right? Let's say you're a photographer, your father is in mining, right? You love photography, never disputed with you, helped you do your photography, you started your own business, it's going well. Your father is in mining, right? He has trained you to a point where he sees that if I leave my mine with this photographer, my mine will not only help him, but will help all the family members and the coming generations. So he wants to choose you, and people are saying, no, don't force this person, they must continue to do what they love. What is supposed to happen to the inheritance? We must never despise an inheritance. No matter how small it looks, we must never despise it. An inheritance or a legacy must go to the child who is not selfish. Who is not self-centered. Who, when you know that when you die, all of your other children will be, and they're there. It's just that mostly they are never interested. That is the biggest problem. But if we can get them to the right mindset to say, Okay, maybe you're not interested, but be an overseer. Be the one who manages so that other people can benefit from this umbrella, right? So we are trying to get back to the original, family structure, right? That's where we are trying to go. Some stick figure here. So these are people. In the original family structure, the patriarch, the founder, who now has a clan, it used to cover everybody, right? Everyone is covered. So a family unit or a clan is a place where you will never see that this one is not really doing well in life. Not really doing well. This one is doing well, this one. No, you would never see that. But because we lost the original teachings, the original skills, what do? The child who doesn't seem to succeed at the family house is insulted. Maybe even disowned. Day in, day out, there are insults. Nobody takes them seriously. Nobody is building that person. Right? I understand that there are people who just want other people to do for them, right? So you will have that family member who just looks at you and say, yeah, but you're not doing much for us. If you were doing much for us, but you can see that there is no zeal to work, right? If this family member had a zeal to work, then it is easier because now you can develop them. They don't have a zeal maybe to expand their mind, they just want to sit down and people to serve them. It is some sort of an entitlement, but that's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about that child who doesn't seem to be making it in school. In his studies, for example. They get insults, they get all these things, and they no longer feel safe in their own homes. They go to the streets to get teachings, to get all these things. Instead of having the head who is there, who's always, teaching, making that person fit to do something, right? Like I said, there's a lot of families that don't have communication completely. They can't sit down and communicate as a family. Everybody's doing everything. They believe that, I took them to school, I bought them nice labels, I invested so much in them in terms of monetary value, so they should be okay. But it takes a lot more than money to build a family, right? Money is just there so that you guys can build easier, so that you are not starving when you are building, right? But you should build an institution where everybody is not only covered, but they are getting some sort of a training. They are blossoming. They're getting that attention, right? So that they can be able to discover what they can do and they can be able to learn from you, right? The original African family structure is where we want to take it, then we will no longer cry about, there are no jobs. I graduated 8 years ago. I have a degree, I have a BTech, I have a diploma, I have honors, I have all these things, but I'm still sitting at home. I've been sitting at home. Why are you sitting at home? It's because we lost this self-sustenance. The people of old understood that they were not sure of what we call loyalty. We are building, but who's loyal? But then when we are building with blood, people who are descendant from you, loyalty is then ensured. All right, so that's what I have for you guys today. The African family structure. So like, comment, subscribe, and if you feel like there's something you disagree with, you are very much welcome to disagree, to debate, to insult. I can take it, and I love taking it. All right, so I am Manaka Anthony Raphasha, and you're not.